Well, I would like to tell the listeners that you can get better. I did a little poll once, not scientific, but about 50% of the people thought that they couldn't get better from PTSD, that they would never recover, that was the rest of their life, was that they're going to be struggling with this. And you can recover from PTSD. That's what I would tell people.
Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, brings you information on how you can recover from any mental health issue and achieve a happier life. If you want to know more, please check out his trailer. Bob's notes on today's show follows.
Today I talk with Kathern Berg. She is an alternative health practitioner, a classical homeopath with over 20 years of experience. She specializes in working with people who are struggling with PTSD or CPTSD and, because it seems to appear along with PTSD, she also helps people with long-held grief. She has a lot of stories to tell of clients who have recovered from PTSD using classical homeopathy. Kathryn studied at the Northwestern Academy of Homeopathy to learn how to solve health problems. She is the owner of Lotus Homeopathy, Incorporated, and a certified classical homeopath.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hello, Kathryn. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I always ask my guests to tell a little bit about themselves or their brand.
I definitely can. Well, I'm a classical homeopath, and I've been working as a homeopath for over 2 decades. And I stumbled upon homeopathy by accident. I injured myself, and a friend of mine told me to take some arnica, and I'm like, what's arnica? And she told me that it was a homeopathic remedy for trauma, physical trauma in this case. And so when I went to the store to get some, I found some books about homeopathy, and I decided, well, I probably should know what I'm doing if I'm going to be using this. And so I went ahead and bought 3 books, and by the time I was done reading them, I decided I needed to find a homeopathy school because that's what I wanted to do.
Terrific. When you were growing up, how was your family of origin? Would you say it was normal, or was there any problems?
I would say largely normal for the time period that I was living in. I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's a benefit to being the youngest. Your parents become better parents. Sometimes they have, they're a little better off and all of that. So I was close to my sister who's 2 years older than me growing up. We just played constantly together, and it was good. And I'm, still in touch with all my siblings.
Do you feel that you have or had any bouts with depression before?
With depression?
Yeah. Any anxiety, depression? Not really.
Yeah. Well, I did, from time to time. Nothing real serious, nothing that put me on medication. Probably, the thing that was the most, the incident that might have caused or brought about depression was just when the birth of my first child didn't go the way I wanted it to.
Okay.
I had my hopes up.
Okay.
And it ended up as a C-section, which I wanted a natural birth. I'm all about things natural, right? Yes, I was in labor for 48 hours, though, at one time. Yeah.
All right. So you know what pain's all about. So you work in homeopathy. Could you explain that? I think a lot of listeners may not know what that is.
I agree with you. I think that they won't know what it is either because everyone gets it mixed up. They think it's essential oils or they think it's herbs or something like that. So homeopathy is a form of natural medicine. And what makes homeopathy unique is we take natural substances. They could be plants, minerals, or animals. and they're prepared in a very particular way. And then when the symptoms of the remedy, we turn them into what we call homeopathic remedy. And when the symptoms of the remedy match the symptoms of the client, the body can heal itself. So it's like a little lesson in the body how to heal itself, and it can heal mental, emotional, and physical.
Okay. You emphasize PTSD? Is that what you do mostly?
Well, I would say it's about half my clients, and then the other half are a mix of other things.
So if I came in and said, "Oh, I'm having terrible nightmares," what would you do? What would you prescribe?
Well, what would happen first is I would have you take a little assessment so we can do a before and after. And then I would take your case, is the phrase we use in homeopathy. So we would have a conversation for an hour and 45 minutes at the most, and find out, what you experienced, and what, more importantly than what was experienced, was how did you respond to it? And what are your emotions and sensations around that incident? And, I know a lot of those remedies now, from having treated a lot of folks. And so it's a pretty quick decision for me, but I can't tell you what I would recommend without taking a case.
I got you.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you would recommend something, and then how long would it take for results to show up?
It could happen within days. Yes.
Okay. Even a severe case of PTSD, or? Even
a severe case of PTSD. The more severe it is, we can give you doses that are more potent than a mild case. So if someone had PTSD from, say, a car accident, or a near car accident, would be probably a different potency, than someone who found themselves helpless in a military situation. So right.
All right. So, what are the other ailments that you have? I mean, is it just about everything, or is there a limitation on this?
Oh, of the things that homeopathy can help?
Yes.
Well, there certainly are limitations, but, mostly the limitations are based on how quickly do you get in to see a practitioner. Because if it's something that causes tissue changes or something like that can't be reversed, then it's less likely to be able to help. But the other kinds of people I see a lot of are women in perimenopause. So, women in their 40s and 50s and even 60s. And I also see a lot of children on the autism spectrum. So those are.
So how long has homeopathy been around? Is this relatively new, or has it been around a while? Or is it?
It has been around for more than 200 years. Samuel Hahnemann is the founder of the Principles of Homeopathy. He was a German physician, and he was also a chemist. And he discovered the principles of homeopathy by accident, one could say, kind of like how I discovered it, right? He used to translate medical textbooks because he didn't like the way medicine was practiced back then. Well, that's when they were giving people mercury for, sexually transmitted diseases and things like that, right? So he was not real keen on practicing medicine, but he had 13 children, so he had to do something to make a living, right? So he translated medical textbooks over in Europe, and of course, all the countries had different languages, and he spoke 6, 7, 8 languages. I don't remember exactly. But one of the things he saw in a medical textbook was they said that the reason that quinine was so effective at treating malaria is because it was so bitter. And he said, being a chemist, he knew a substance is way more bitter than quinine, and they didn't touch malaria. So he didn't think that was a logical explanation. And so his curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to take a dose of quinine just to see what would happen. And what happened was he developed the symptoms of malaria. He didn't develop malaria. He developed the symptoms of malaria. You have to have the protozoa to develop malaria.
Okay.
And so he recognized this concept called like cures like. And this was talked about by Hippocrates and Paracelsus and all these great philosophical thinkers, that came before Dr. Hahnemann. And so he spent the rest of his life trying to figure out how to take these natural things and turn them into something that can heal but not make you worse at the same time.
Okay.
And he did his first publications in the late 1700s. That's when he first wrote about homeopathy. Wow, it's been around since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The million-dollar question, I guess, is there any side effects? And if so, what?
No, there aren't any side effects to homeopathy. Well, see, homeopathy is energy medicine. It's not chemical medicine. So when you're taking a drug, you're taking chemicals into your body. But when you take homeopathy, you're bringing energy into your body. So you might have what we call an aggravation, where your symptoms might get a little worse before they get better. But that's actually a positive sign that you're on the right path to healing. And by the way, there's lots of forms of medicine, a lot of modalities that have aggravation. So that's not unusual.
I guess that's the selling point, then. There is no side effect.
Yeah.
But exactly what is this medicine made of? I mean, are there some main plants, or how do you create these remedies?
Okay. Well, it's a really interesting process, and it's called potentizing. So I'm not going to get into a lot of the details how it could go this way or that, but I can explain it to you generally, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So we take the substance that we want to turn into a remedy, and let's say one of the really common remedies for military PTSD, for example, is a remedy called aconite. And it's a plant. It's a flower. It's a delphinium. And so what we do is we take the substance and we dilute it. And I'm not going to get into how you get a plant to become liquid, but at any event, we dilute it a ratio of 1 in 100. So it's 1 part of the substance to 99 parts of water.
Okay.
And then you take that substance and you wrap it against a hard surface, 40 to 100 times.
How do you do it if it's liquid?
Yeah, it's, there are pharmacies that make these remedies, and they have their little vials or big vials, actually, that they use to make the remedies.
So pharmacies actually make these?
Yes, homeopathic pharmacies. Yes.
I got you. Okay.
All right. So once they take the substance and they wrap it against a hard surface 40 to 100 times, they take 1 part out, they put it in 99 parts of water, and they do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then that happens over and over again. And so for an average person who comes to see me, a military PTSD person, I would start them out on a remedy that had gone through that process of dilution, and then the wrapping against a hard surface we call succussion. I would go through that, or I would find a remedy for my client that had gone through that 200 times, and that would be called a 200C potency. 200 meaning it had gone through it 200 times, and the C means it's a ratio of 1 in 100, because C is, of course, Roman numeral 100. And then that remedy, the last time that they make the remedy, that it goes through that process, it gets put in alcohol. And then they can take the drops and they put it on pellets. And then the alcohol won't dissolve the pellets because they're made out of sugar. and so they won't dissolve the pellets, because we don't want to do that. And then people just take these little pellets and they dissolve them under their tongue.
Okay. So, what is the percentage of success rate that you have had? Is it high?
It's definitely high. It's over 80%.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
It's excellent. On your website, you said that you have a case study on homeopathy.
Yes, homeopathy and PTSD.
What was done? Was there a double blind test and all that?
No, I would call it a preliminary study rather than a research study.
Okay.
That's a case study, and I really just wanted to know in a large enough number whether it could help people and how fast it could help people. I was pretty sure it could. So I wanted to know how rapidly it would help people, and was it going to be most helpful to military, most helpful to first responders, or most helpful to civilians? And it's kind of interesting. Some of these, it's hard to do a double-blind study on natural health things sometimes. So we have to look at other ways to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, if you have 80% success rate, who cares where it came from? I mean,
I have an interesting article that I just posted on my Facebook page, my business page. And it was a study done in South America. And there's something called agro-homeopathy. And it's the concept of using homeopathy in agriculture. And so they did a study on a certain kind of pepper that's really popular down in Brazil. And some of the studies were done on peppers grown outdoors, and some were done on peppers grown in a greenhouse. And then some of the peppers, of course, just got water with a blank sugar pellet in it, and the others got the actual remedy. And there's no placebo effect on a plant, right?
So the ones with the real, I guess you call it medicine, had a much more success rate than the placebo.
They grew taller, and even if they were bothered by insects, like there were insects on them, they seemed to thrive in spite of it. It was really fascinating.
So what made you decide to specialize in PTSD? Was there a personal reason, or it just happened that way?
No, it wasn't a personal reason. Like I had really suffered from it for a long time and recovered from it. It was more that when I had a person tell me once, when I was trying to look for a volunteer organization to work with, and they said, what you should do is look for something that works with an organization that deals with an issue that you simply would find intolerable if it wasn't solved. And so when I wanted to do a case study, I looked around at, number one, what does Western medicine not have a good solution for? And number two, what I found intolerable. And I find it intolerable that there are, 20 some men and women in the military every day who commit suicide. I find that intolerable.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, I think they should try, everything. If one thing doesn't work, there are plenty of things to try for PTSD. They shouldn't suffer in silence and, like you said, tragically commit suicide, which is so bad on the family. And I mean, what I preach is to stick it out no matter what, and it will get better. It always does. I mean, I was a terrible wreck, and now I'm not so much of a terrible wreck. I can be happy at times, and it's thanks to my medicine, but I never did try an alternative. Maybe in the future I will. So So what happens if you're not able to help a person? You just said, no, nothing's happening. What do you tell them?
Well, what I would tell them is, first we would take a post evaluation quiz. Like I mentioned, I always start out with one, just to see if maybe they actually are better and they just don't recognize it. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't remember what they were like before they took their remedy.
Okay.
And so there's that. But what I would probably do is just say, I feel like you can be helped, but I'm just not seeing what remedy you need. And so I would refer them to a colleague.
Okay. What kind of colleague?
Another homeopath. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. That's what I would do.
All right. So what's the quickest way to get help through this remedy?
The quickest way would be to schedule an appointment with me so that we can get started right away.
Okay. Do you do virtual sessions?
I do. In fact, my case studies that I did, the people were from all over the country. And that was even before COVID. So I've been doing Zoom appointments since before it was popular.
And then you mail them or you tell them to go to a pharmacy?
No, I mail them.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So your phone number is on your website, correct?
My phone number, and there's also a button on my website where you can just schedule an appointment.
All right. Now, what kind of links do you have? Would you want to give some of the links that you have?
There's a link, and it's a link about, or a link to the PTSD success stories, the testimonials. There is one in there that you could find and you could put in your show notes.
Okay. And you haven't written any books on this, have you?
I have not written any books. I do write a lot of blog posts, though, and there are a number of blog posts on my website that are free, and people can read them. And where there are, remedies that people can just get a hold of themselves, I do write about that, because I think that if it's an uncomplicated case and you can help yourself, because remedies are sold over the counter, so some of them, not all of them.
I always give my guests the last say. Is there something you would like to tell our listeners that we haven't covered?
Well, I would like to tell the listeners that you can get better. I did a little poll once, not scientific, but about 50% of the people thought that they couldn't get better from PTSD, that they would never recover, that was the rest of their life, was that they're going to be struggling with this. And you can recover from PTSD. That's what I would tell people. That's beautiful.
I think that's great. I mean, you have 80% success rate. I don't even think the medicines have close to that. So this is an alternative, and it may be a very good one. I haven't used it personally, but I urge everyone to check it out and make sure it's, not an option for you, because if you're not getting help anywhere else, here's another place to get help for PTSD and other ailments. Are there other ones that you could think of that you have done in the last year or so, as far as like a sprain or any kind of pain?
Oh, you mean like physical injury?
Yeah, any kind of, other than PTSD,
sure.
What have you treated recently?
Okay, so I do help people with acute things as well. So helped lots of people with COVID over the last few years. I help people with injuries. Like concussions are so much easier to get recover from a concussion if you're using homeopathy. And I've helped a lot of people with that. I've helped, as I said, people with who are in perimenopause. I've helped people on the spectrum. I've helped people who have trouble learning. I've helped people with Lyme disease. Those are just a few of the ones I can think of just off the top of my head.
I really appreciate you coming on and explaining this to everyone. I think people should consider it. And I mean, it's 80% success rate. So like I said, you can't get much better than that. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It was very enjoyable talking to you. And hopefully we got the message out to everyone that you're there and you can help.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed our conversation as well.
All right. Thank you.
Today I talk with Kathern Berg. She is an alternative health practitioner, a classical homeopath with over 20 years of experience. She specializes in working with people who are struggling with PTSD or CPTSD and, because it seems to appear along with PTSD, she also helps people with long-held grief. She has a lot of stories to tell of clients who have recovered from PTSD using classical homeopathy. Kathryn studied at the Northwestern Academy of Homeopathy to learn how to solve health problems. She is the owner of Lotus Homeopathy, Incorporated, and a certified classical homeopath.